In this lesson, we'll get our render setup going. We'll look at the HDR image that we're going to be using, and we'll add a car paint material. So the first thing that we're going to do is go ahead and merge together this model that we've created with kind of a render setup that we have. Now, I mentioned before, this isn't really a rendering training title, but we're going to try to sprinkle in a little bit of rendering and a little bit of materials to go with it. So we have a render setup already ready to go. So let's go ahead and go to File, Merge, and it's just going to be this Mustang Lights import. And so it's going to be in your scenes directory in your project files, and you can go ahead and merge that together. And we'll go ahead and say I want to merge everything. Say OK to that, and it's going to bring in a ground plane and also a dome here. Now we're going to be using an HDR image as lighting and reflection. So let's go ahead and see where that image is. And so in a new slot, I'm going to go ahead and just get material, and from scene I'm going to choose this environment dome, and that's going to open this up. And now we can see under here, if we go down to maps, we've got this map here under self illumination. Okay, and let me show you where we're going to be able to get this. Now we're not going to be able to distribute this image, but you can go in and download it yourself. So I'm here at openfootage.net. Okay, that's openfootage.net, and I'm just going to go over to HDRI Panorama. And the particular one that we're using is this 360-degree bridge, and you can download it from any of these links here. Unfortunately, we're not able to distribute that image, but you can feel free to use your own HDR image, or you can use this particular one if you want to get the sort of the exact result. Okay, so once we have that, that's now plugged into. You can now replace it with this self-illumination map. Go ahead and plug that in and follow the path there, and tell Max where you have that image located, or you can replace it with your own image. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All right, let's go ahead and set up our render. Because the materials that we're going to be adding are going to be really dependent on the reflection and all of these things, we want to set up the render before we actually start to add any of those types of materials. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn off our standard display here. And now I want to go up to our render setup. Okay, and you can change the output size if you'd like to. I want to change the renderer here under the renderer tab. I'm going to go to mental ray, and let's do photometric lighting with global illumination. We'll go ahead and load that. I'm going to go into indirect illumination tab. We're going to enable final gather. I'm going to set the number of diffuse bounces to 1. Okay, and I want to keep the weight at 1 as well. Let's go ahead and set this precision to, let's set it down to medium. Okay, and let's go into the top menu up here, and we'll go to rendering, and let's open up exposure control. You go ahead and close this out. And this exposure control, we'll go ahead and choose this value here. Okay, go ahead and do a render preview. See what that looks like. And you see it's computing this, and this is a great way to adjust your image post-render, and then it will just take into account your exposure controls, and then it'll add that onto whatever your rendered image is. Okay, and now let's go ahead and set this exposure value to something lower. So let's go ahead and set that to -1, and there you can see what that looks like. Okay, and then you can go with your camera and just get any sort of an angle that you want. You can move around. Just so that we can kind of see what's happening in here. All right, now let's go ahead and create our car paint shader. We're going to go into the material editor, and I'm going to get a new slot here, and let's go ahead and say get material. Okay, and we'll say new material, and because we're using mental ray, we have a lot of mental ray materials that we're able to use. Okay, so right here we have a car paint material. Let's go ahead and open that up, and now you can see that the default settings here are that it's kind of a red color. You can feel free to add any color you want. I'm going to change this base color to kind of more of an orange color. Okay, and you can see how that affects it in the little preview there. Okay, you can also see the little flakes in there. So what we have down here are the flakes, and you can change the weight of the flakes, the distribution of the flakes, and so forth. The light facing color you can see is that. So I'm going to make this kind of another orange color. Something like this. I want to add some saturation to this color and make it a little bit more red, so something a little bit more like that. And I'll do the same thing here. Just add a little bit more red to that until it gets to be something like that. Okay, we can increase the value, do whatever you want as far as getting it to look the way that you want it to look. You can lighten that up a bit. Say OK to that. So just feel free to modify these however you want. You've got diffuse coloring. You've got the actual flakes. Okay, so all the little metal flakes that are in the paint. And then you've got the specularity values that you can play with as well. So let's go ahead and name this. Just name it car paint. And now we want to go in and start to add this to the pieces that we want to actually be that paint. So I'm going to go ahead and add it to door, the handle. Let's go ahead and add it to this side piece, as well as this piece down here. Let's add it to the cover over the windows. Let's add it to the roof, the trunk and spoiler. Okay. Add that to that trunk. This piece down here. Let's go ahead and add it up here on the front. The hood we'll add it to as well. Come around and make sure you add it to all these pieces on the other side. Okay. And the door frame, I think we missed probably the door frame on the other side. Make sure we get that. Okay, and then we'll add it down here and also this piece until we've pretty much got everything. I think we've got most everything there now. Okay, so let's go ahead and just take a look with the car paint shader, which was very easy to put on. Let's just take a look at what this looks like now with no other changes. So I'll go ahead and just do a render. I'm going to pause here for a second while this renders. Alright, so there's our render with very little tweaking of the car paint material that we've got. You can see the reflection from the map that we've got in there. You can see we missed a couple of pieces, the gas cap and the rocker panel down there. Now these pieces are going to be black, so those are fine. And like I said, you can add this to if you want to, make it whatever sort of color combination that you want. That's completely up to you as far as that goes. But you can use that car paint material if you want to. All right, so in the next lesson, let's go ahead and create some materials for the interior of the light. So kind of a reflective material without using a texture map. We'll look at how we can create that. So we'll go ahead and do that in the next lesson.